All right, welcome into a special edition emergency podcast here on a Friday afternoon. Hail to the podcast, brought to you by Maize Blue Review. We told you on our last episode that when this news broke, we would go live with reporting, feedback, conversation, and here we are, Juwan Howard out as Michigan head coach. I told you on Sunday, I figured he'd be staying. There was a lot of questions about whether Ward would move on or give him another year. And during the week, as Josh was reporting over at Maize Blue Review, Michigan.rivals.com, things really felt like they were trending this way. Ward makes the decision to let Juwan go. This is not a resignation. Juwan made the decision himself. So here we sit, one of Michigan basketball's worst seasons in its history. And Juwan Howard, Michigan basketball legend, part of the Fab Five, is out. So here we are to have conversation. Josh Henske, Intel insider and publisher, Maize Blue Review, joining me as always, as well as Brock Heilig, who has been our basketball staff writer and watching every second of these games. We will be sending him hazard pay for that this year, I believe. And Dennis Fithian with his afternoon live podcast. But hey, it's over, and we've moved on a decision rather quickly, Josh Henske. Ward Manuel fires Juwan Howard.
Yeah. I think the talk really turned coming out of the weekend. It was kind of, I was never sold on the fact that Ward wanted to bring Juwan back. All that talk earlier turns out to be crap, which it always ends usually ends that way. I don't know how you could possibly look at that program and defend it at all and say, hey, this should get another year. Because really, I mean, you're asking for pretty much more of the same. So I would say around probably Tuesday or Wednesday around that time is when things really started to turn in terms of, more definitive talk that, hey, I'm not sold that, that Juwan's going to be back next year. And, there's also talk of a potential resignation and all that stuff. And I think most of that is due to the fact that, just because what Juwan Howard means to the basketball program, period, as a figure. It's an awkward divorce. It's a tough conversation to have for a guy like Juwan, but that's the risk you take when you bring in a program legend to be your head coach. I mean, sometimes it works out brilliantly, like you saw with the football program, and sometimes it ends in a dud with the basketball program. It happened with Patrick Ewing at Georgetown too.
This has become a trend, and a trend that I believe is now over. The NBA legendary players returning to college.
Yeah,
Ewing, Hardaway, Vanderbilt recently, Jerry Stackhouse, previously Chris Mullins. Feels like that's probably not going to be happening again anytime soon.
No, and Juwan's early success kind of pioneered that fact, like, hey, maybe these, NBA guys that go to the college level is a thing, but you give them a little bit of time, and the college game is just a different beast. It's a different beast. More so now these days than it has ever been. I guess you can almost consider it almost a professional league dealing with, the transfer portal, the NIL and all of this stuff. It's just a different beast. And, Michigan isn't a job where you can make sacrifices for your head coach. You have to get a guy in that knows the current climate of college ball, knows how to navigate and build a roster. More importantly, I think that's the biggest factor out of all of them, is to get a guy who can build a roster. Because, we saw Juwan just couldn't do it. And, part of that is also with his group of assistants too. It didn't really help him out much either. So, it's an unfortunate divorce, an awkward conversation to have, but it was one that needed to be had, and I'm glad we're in this position now where Michigan can kind of move forward and rebuild, because that's what it is right now. It's a rebuild. So, nothing against Juwan Howard as a person, what he means to this program. It's just he just was not. He's a legendary player, just not a legendary coach, and that's just simply what it comes down to at the end of the day. And that's all right. I mean, it's time for Michigan to move forward, and now we can start thinking about names that make sense.
And Brock, real quick to Josh's point on this transition now from how we view Juwan after taking this position and not succeeding. I've talked about how not only did he have to come in and maintain something that was built by Beilein and success, right? He had to do it during this transition to the NIL transfer portal era. Had to deal with obviously the COVID year like everyone else, and then also had all this extra weight of restoring relationships and repairing perception of the Fab Five era. Yep. And at the end of the day, I think that was just too much for a first-time head coach returning to his alma mater, and it was just too much to handle.
Yeah, it was. And it's unfortunate that he kind of came in at a time where, like you mentioned, there were a lot of things in the sport that were changing, and it was a lot for a first-time head coach. But I hope as we move on from this, Michigan fans can realize Juwan Howard was a really good player at Michigan, and he'll always be legendary for what he did with the Fab Five. It just didn't work out as a coach. And, there should still be that level of respect there for him as a player and as an icon of the program, just not necessarily in the coaching sense. And it's on Michigan now to move on as fast as possible. But yeah, clearly didn't work out with Juwan. And you have to at least give Ward Manuel some credit for making the right move. I think everyone knew this was the right move, and he made it, right? So there's been a lot of criticism on him lately about football, baseball, kind of everything. But he did make the right move here. So you have to at least give him a little bit of credit.
Brock, you are the king of reading my mind in terms of segues, and you nailed it. Josh, you said earlier, you didn't understand why maybe some of the mood was this wasn't going to get done. Ward Manuel is the mood and the reason why people didn't think that this decision might be made at all, let alone as quickly as it has been made. As Brock just said, in the last 2 years, 4 major sports, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, right? It's been I don't want to use the word tumultuous. Michigan won a national championship, blah, 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 whatever. But there feels like there's been some instability, right? And the way these things have happened with hockey and the Mel Pearson situation, how that dragged on and the Regents getting involved, whatever your perception is. I mean, I keep telling people, you got to listen to the words Jim Harbaugh is saying. Jim Harbaugh was going to the Chargers. Once they offered, that was it. There was nothing Ward Manuel could have done, but obviously people have perceptions of that relationship and how Michigan handled Harbaugh. So at the end of the day, this is a Ward Manuel hire. A lot of people questioned even Juwan Howard being hired in the first place. Right now, flashback, there were NBA teams trying to interview Juwan Howard when he was an assistant with the Heat, right? So this isn't like the guy had a lot of respect at the point, was seen as this up-and-coming coach. I don't remember if it was after his first year or his second year. We joked the other day that he turned down a Lakers opportunity to stay here, which is crazy to think about. So, it's not like, I mean, I know there were people that thought this wouldn't go well and people that thought it would, right? That happens with any coaching hire, but just still. So now that, like you said, we move into this cycle, and you're probably going to see us. I've been grabbing my phone. I'm sure Josh will. Anything that comes out regarding names or Ward's path. There are some folks telling me that Ward has a name in mind already that makes me think he was prepared for this, and maybe this process will go differently. But I know what you said, building a roster, some of the priorities for the next head coach. But what does this look like? What does this process look like with Ward Manuel, who frankly can't get this wrong?
No. I mean, he can't afford to get it wrong. A lot of people I know bring up the argument, well, can you even trust Ward to even make the next hire? Well, I counter that with I'd rather be in a position where he has to make that move than continue on with what we're seeing now, because you're not going to get better. It's one of those things, and I'm not trying to call out your average fan here. That's not the point of it. He says, I'll criticize Ward for making the bad hire in the first place. Yeah, in a sense, yes. I mean, but hindsight is always 2020. I mean, you would call Ward a genius if this worked out. It's the same. It's the
I'll tell you
same.
what, the day of that press conference, this was a pretty happy fan base.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, it's just it didn't work out. And again, I'm not calling anyone out, I'm not doing that. I'm just saying like it's just the way, a critical fourth down call or a 2-point conversion that failed, you call the coach an idiot if they didn't make it, or oh well, look at the balls on that guy when they make the call, like Dan Campbell, perfect example. It's hindsight is always 2020, but again, I want to reiterate, I'd rather Michigan be in this position where they have to pick a guy, a new guy, a fresh ideas, than be stuck in this rut they're in now, because there was no getting out of this rut. I mean, I don't even know. It's not even a rut. It was a gigantic hole with just rubble covered it. I mean, there's a lot of pieces that have to be picked up here with this program, with the next guy moving forward. I mean, you have to rebuild, recruiting relationships. You have to rebuild relationships with maybe whoever is left on the roster that wants to stay. I mean, now the coach is fired. They can enter the portal whenever they want, starting right now. So who knows when we get the news of someone leaving the portal. I mean, Michigan is obviously not going to the NCAA tournament. So I think that's also ideal for Michigan at the same time too, because they can look for a coach while everyone else is getting ready for tournaments and things like that. So you can kind of get ahead in that regard. So I also think it's good that timing wise made out. But you just have to see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of really good candidates out there. We'll ultimately, I think we'll see how it turns out. But this isn't going to be an easy fix, regardless of who they get. I mean, they could get Coach K out of retirement and bring him in, and it wouldn't fix this in a year. It's not going to be but the thing is, it should be an easy rebuild, but not a quick fix, if that makes any kind of sense at all. I mean, It's not going to be a 1-year thing going, oh, everything's back to normal, it's fine. I mean, this program needs to be built up from the bottom to the top. I mean, you're talking about now a new strength and conditioning program, trainers, all that stuff, a new roster, new coaching staff. It's a whole new culture. It's a whole new rebuild. So, yeah, I mean, you have to be in this position to make the decision of who you have to do it. You couldn't have gone on with this. So, I'm not saying that you have to trust Ward. You will have your opinions.
You don't have a choice, unfortunately.
Yeah, but you kind of have. Have to just wait and see what he does with this. So, it would be nice if we had more information about where they go next. But, I think I hope it's not a quick hire. I'm not saying like it should be a month, but like a couple of days and there's already a guy, that means that there's probably someone that was either, unemployed or not being sought after. So,
well, and I think one question fair to ask, and Brock, if you have something else you want to discuss, feel free. But Josh just kind of made me think of this. Michigan's not making the NCAA tournament this year. We've known that for a while. I wish I remembered who saw this, because I don't want to steal it, but I thought it was really funny. I saw it was like bracketology. Joe Lenardi has Michigan in his first 85 out. And you brought up we need a new strength and conditioning coach in Ann Arbor. Michigan's John Sanderson, now an assistant of some sort at Illinois. What a troll job. Bravo, Illini. Obviously, he once again contributed some information to an article regarding Juwan and culture with The Athletic this morning. Brock, my question is, this move did happen quickly. Ward said he hadn't thought about this, which, again, I told a lot of people, when you posted and got some of those comments from him regarding him waiting till the end of the season and blah, blah, blah. Like, what's he supposed to say, right? But the flip of that is, what were you waiting for? We've seen Ohio State move on and succeed with an interim coach. They might get into the tournament now, whether they keep him permanently or have already gotten a jump start on the process of finding a new head coach, right? Maybe Sanderson is still here, but instead, you clear him of any wrongdoing. You have this giant cloud hanging over the program. They win 2 games the entire 2024 calendar, the same as Michigan football, which is an unbelievable thing to say, right? There is part of me that says, hey, you needed to see that last loss in the Big Ten tournament. Now, the reporting from The Athletic today was that they brought in a third-party firm last week to basically consulting to kind of ask questions to get a read on the culture or what's going on. Maybe that informed his opinion, but I don't know what they could have told him that we all haven't seen either, right? Yeah. So there is that side of it. And to Josh's point, the next hire, not only will that inform your opinion of the program moving forward, but it'll also kind of inform your opinion of how we got here, right? Like,
yeah.
We're also talking about, not to cut you off, I'm just gonna make a real quick point here, but you're also talking about the next decade too.
Yeah.
You're talking, I mean, like, this program is already set behind, but if this next coach doesn't work out, you're setting it back just decades. So go ahead, Brock. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a tough paradox because some people would have argued Juwan should have been fired in the middle of the season, but it's tough for Ward Manuel because that doesn't really help the program at all. Like, who would step in? Phil Martelli, and at that point, he's not going to be the next coach, right? So you're kind of looking at, like, firing him, I guess, would have at least gotten him out the door and maybe would have reset the culture or something like that. But it's not the same instance as Ohio State because you don't have a young assistant who's ready to step up and potentially take over that next head coaching role. So I do think it's a little bit different than Ohio State's, but at the end of the day, the right decision was made. We can debate whether it was made at the right time, but I don't think firing him a month ago would have really done the program much better than firing him now. I just think firing him at all was the right move. So I don't think it would have changed much. They weren't going to make the tournament anyway, even if Juwan gets fired in early February and Martelli steps in. They're not going to make the tournament. So it's not like they missed out on anything. You got, like I said earlier, you have to give Ward at least a little bit of credit for making this move. But to go back to what Josh was saying a little bit earlier about rebuilding the roster and totally building it from the ground up, I will say what should be exciting for Michigan fans in today's college sports is that programs can be rebuilt a lot quicker than they could have been 10 or 15 years ago with the transfer portal, with NIL, things like that. You can go and pick and choose a few transfers and bring them in and turn things around a lot quicker than imagine if Michigan was in this spot 15 years ago and you get a mass exodus to the portal from guys who just aren't bought in anymore. Who are you going to bring in? You're going to bring in your recruiting class and no one else, because the guys who were transferring in had to sit a year. So I do think things can be rebuilt a lot quicker. I'm not saying next year, Michigan's going to go make some deep run. I won't even say they'll make it to the tournament. We won't know until there's a coach and a roster, but it will be a lot easier for this new coach to rebuild things than it was 10 or 15 years ago.
I'm going to challenge you on the word rebuild. I think they can turn around the current situation, but a lot of those players you bring in for that quick turnaround is a quick fix that won't stick throughout, right? And it's not a sustainable model and probably not one at Michigan, right? So, like, the team that pops in my head right now is Kansas State. Kansas State last year was like the story of the transfer portal and how you can build a team and turn around and whatever. And they're not terrible this year, right? But they're bottom half of the Big 12, 1914, something like that. So that's a fight you have to have every year once you start that gig. Now, that kind of, again, Brock, you're really good at this without knowing what I'm going to talk about, brings me to the next point with NIL, right? That's a big key of this. Now, we've seen Michigan use NIL as a way to maintain what it's built, right? So to Brock's point of the rebuilding, it's one thing to do it, but then you want to keep it, right? That's the key. We don't want chaos every year trying to put a team together. So moving into this next era with Michigan and NIL at basketball, now we've talked about it's really hard to raise NIL funds for a team that's not doing well and the optics are bad. It's not coincidence that Michigan wins an Natty and, oh, look, all this NIL money is coming in, right? Until there's revenue share, you're relying on fans, really, to contribute to this. So what's this gonna look like, Josh, as far as NIL, Michigan? I mean, we can talk about admissions eventually as well, but what's your thinking on that piece of it? Because I'd imagine if you asked Juwan privately, he's probably going to blame that pretty heavily.
Well, first of all, you got to have a coach that actually goes out and tries to get NIL dollars. And that was something Juwan did not do. You can't just get NIL money in your lap. You got to go out and work for it. And that's another part of the challenge of being a collegiate coach these days is you also have to go out and kiss a little ass of the, big donors, fan base, all that kind of stuff. You have to go out and do it. You can't just expect it. I'm Juwan Howard and NIL dollars right in your lap. You got to go work. You got to work for it. And it's just something that Juwan didn't do until it was too late. I mean, he was costing collectives money by canceling last minute appearances and things like that. It was just a mess. And if you're not willing to go out there and try to get money, it's not going to work. The Kamwa thing, he had to go out and get the NIL money last minute. It was almost too late.
Right.
And he had to go out and get money for Hunter Dickinson to stay, and it was almost too late the first time. And then it was obviously too late the second time. But you got to have a guy that is willing to get out there and work for NIL money. That's just part of it. And that's something that Sharon is doing a really good job of too, is being more collaborative with the collectives. And another part of it too is that Juwan didn't let his players do in-season signings. You gotta let these guys do things. If you're letting your players to do whatever they want in the weight room, then you should allow them to do whatever they want on the NIL part during the season too. So it's just, there needs to be a whole process change from top to bottom. And the most important part is that it's culture that needs to be built. And that's just something that, yep, there it is right there. Your average fan nailed it. The culture has to stick. It's exactly right. So from there, the NIL will come if you get someone that's willing to be collaborative with these collectives and stuff, because the money is absolutely there. And you can say whatever you want about admissions and all that stuff. You should hire. You shouldn't go after kids who don't have grades. I mean, that's good that they play ball, but if they don't have the grades, that's it. Just is what it is. You can't. Yeah, it's just, you knew for months that Caleb Love wasn't going to qualify academically. And yet you still held on to hope that, maybe, there'd be a change of heart. You can't do that.
I don't know if they were just trying to make Michigan uncomfortable or what they thought. Like, just so we're clear, and I normally don't get into details like this, so I'm not going to get into too many. Most of these kids, when they come in, have to either be a part of a bridge program or take summer classes or do something to get their credits right. I don't know, where'd Brock go? I had a really good question for him.
His internet's doing the normal weekly thing.
Yeah. He's better when he's in that closet. So
yeah.
Here's the deal though, and I'll just be frank and not too much, but Caleb Love literally couldn't take enough credits to become eligible at Michigan. This isn't a Terrence Shannon situation where he just had to take some spring and summer classes and then didn't get released from the other program. You might remember Hunter Dickinson having some very public words for, I don't remember the coach's name now, but anyway, it just was never going to happen. And you bring up the signing day thing, or the signatures. You remember that big spring event they had after the spring game last year? I think it was Michigan football, but basketball was going to be there too, right? Mm-hmm. Harbaugh was there. All the star players of Michigan football were there. And do you remember who was there for Michigan basketball last year?
It was like 2 people.
Joey Baker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he was on his way out.
Right. Yeah. Juwan wasn't there. That's the perfect example. Juwan wasn't there. He wasn't there. You have to do this stuff. You have to do the hard, the crap. You have to dig in to do this stuff. It's just, you have to do the work. You have to put in the work. It is what it is.
Brock, you good?
Yeah, I was having some connection issues on my computer, so I'm on my phone now, but I should be all set.
All right, go right ahead. Anything you got on your mind?
Where did we leave off? You guys were talking
about NIL and maybe, whether it's what goes to the future or Juwan's lack of. I mean, was it August 22? He made some public comments about it, kind of complaining about the situation, and then to Josh's point,
hold on,
or not,
I want to answer this too. This was before he was getting heart surgery. Obviously, I'm not expecting him to show up while he's recovering.
Like I said, we were talking about it was during the spring game.
This is before, and this is a string of incidences. This isn't just something that just happened. Yeah, of course he was getting heart surgery. Like,
right.
Yeah, I'm not expecting him to show up to stuff when he's getting his heart worked on.
I'll give you another great example of the difference between football and basketball, and that's Quentin Johnson.
Yeah,
who was declared for the NFL draft, and I don't even know. I'm not 100% sure anymore on the exact rules when it comes to agents and stuff, so I'm not going to pretend to get into it. Suffered an injury that was going to impact his ability to show himself to NFL teams and would have affected his stock this year. Kean Sabb obviously transfers to Alabama. Conversations are being had behind the scenes, and Michigan utilizes NIL to make it more than worth it for Quentin Johnson to return. In fact, we all found out for sure. We had been reporting it, michigan.rivals.com, but we all find out for sure because Randy Wise Automotive, who has worked out NIL deals with multiple football players, worked out a deal with him, and here's this public. I can't think of a single other than Hunter with, was it Chipotle or who? I can't remember who. It wasn't Chipotle, was it?
Yeah, I think it was Chipotle.
Maybe it was Chipotle.
Yeah.
Like, other than that, there's just been nothing. And in case you guys don't watch us every single Sunday, to the point of the heart surgery, I brought this up. Juwan Howard's health is the most important thing, and I would absolutely respect whatever he said he needed in terms of time or whatever to take care of that. Yeah. But I can only take it as seriously as he did. That's the point I've been making. And at the start of the year, we're getting all this mixed information that he's going to be gone this long, but then he's kind of around, and then he's actually literally at a game, but he's supposed to be just in attendance, but he's talking to players. So now there's this weird conflict of, well, now we have to make him an assistant coach because we're going to get in trouble for having too many coaches. And then all of a sudden he's just the head coach again. And it's like, oh, all right. Really odd the way he came back in that situation. And that doesn't even, I know people make a big deal about the Palestra thing. I think that was a really nice gesture to Phil Martelli, but also at the same time, you're the head coach, man. Right. So, Brock, do you have something to touch on? Otherwise I have a question for you.
Yeah. I'll just talk a little bit about what you brought up, Trevor, about Quentin Johnson. I think it's funny how, in my opinion, there's not a single player that's currently on the basketball roster that you would offer like an NIL bag to and be like, hey man, whoever it may be, we really want you to come back for next year. So we're going to offer you X amount of money. So would you please come back? Like, you're not going to be doing that for Terrence Williams. You're not going to be doing it for Jace Howard. You're not going to be doing it for Will Cheddar or anyone else. There's just no one on the roster that
the NIL opportunity is available for a man named Cheddar.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know. I don't see anyone on the roster where they're really the new coach or the new staff, whoever it may be, they're really going to come in and be like, this is a guy we have to keep, and we're going to offer him whatever money he wants to stay. I just don't see that anywhere on the roster.
To your point, when you first said that, I was like, Doug McDaniel, but right?
Yeah, I don't blame him if he gets out of town by tonight.
I mean, and honestly, back to your previous point, Josh, when we've talked about a coach is balanced at Michigan when it comes to academics.
Yep.
You have to prove as a coach that you take them seriously. And I know the student athlete term is not only cliche, but almost offensive at this point. I get it, but they're in college and they have to go to classes and they have to achieve grades. And one of the expectations of these coaches is to have high graduation rates of their players. Michigan graduated everyone and had multiple all big scholars and things like that. And basketball graduated no one.
Yeah.
Right. That's just a fact of it. So, and again, I know Michigan kind of has an advantage of the way the seasons work. Right. But we've seen in the last couple years, not just grad transfers. Josiah Stewart was a junior. Jay Sean Barham is going to be a junior. Yep. Right. We've seen these guys come in. Ernest Hausman was a freshman transferring from Nebraska. Right.
That was the point I was going to make. So, it's a good point.
I love you. But yeah, I mean, fair or not, you got to work within the limits. And again, the other point I feel like I've made in the past too, we're not talking about what held Michigan back from being a perennial national
Michigan football won a national freaking championship.
Right. And Michigan
basketball can't do. It's not like one program has its own set of standards and the other. Well, obviously one program does, but it's not like these two things are totally separate entities. Everything works together. Michigan football won a freaking natty. They won a natty. There's nothing that Michigan basketball can't do under the current, whatever you want to call it, restraints of their own doing. There's nothing that they can do.
And look, you can make the argument they did it going against the current of the current. Damn it, that did not work out well.
You tried.
Yeah. Anyway, they did things a lot differently than most programs in the current climate of college football, right? So they found their way on and off the field. Like, I think we've talked about this with Jim Harbaugh and him seriously entertaining leaving in 2021. I think at the end of that Michigan-Georgia playoff game, he thought this is Michigan football ceiling.
Yep.
Right? I'm not going to be able to beat an SEC team the way they do the things that they're doing. Right. And he comes back in 2022 and kind of has this moment of, wait a minute, I think we can do this. And that was the big selling point on the team coming back in 23 is like, look, this is how we're going to do this. Basketball has to figure that out. Let's address the elephant in the room. If you guys want to bring up some names, feel free. But the name that everybody keeps bringing up is obviously the man Juwan Howard replaced, John Beilein. We just talked about NIL and transfer portal, and that's just one reason I think I'd be hesitant for Beilein to come back. We're talking about the struggles of Michigan in this era, but and you guys obviously can name some of the other reasons you might be hesitant, but it also feels like, hey, other programs have done this kind of thing in the past where I think about Kansas State football and if you want to go back to the way things were, why not go back to the guy who did it? But Josh, even if it's a short-term thing, maybe he's back for a year or two and there's like a clear successor in place or something. I don't know. How realistic do you think it is JB would be even considered? Brock, what did he say when he was asked? I was surprised. He was asked about like the current state of Michigan basketball, and you could tell he was not happy.
Yeah, he said he wasn't going to comment, or it wasn't like he was up there on the desk with guys like Rick Pizzo and some of the other guys on Big Ten Network, and they were kind of recapping the Michigan-Ohio State game from a few Sundays ago, and they went to John Beilein, and he kind of just said, he chuckled. He's like, yeah, I'm really not going to comment on any of that right now. And
I don't play the guy.
Yeah, I think that was a good move on his part,
but you could tell it was like, oh, like,
yeah,
that was awkward. Yeah. So anyway, Josh, realistic option, yes or no, positives, cons. Where are you on? I mean, I'm not pulling this out of thin air. A lot of folks seem to be dropping Beilein's name as a quick fix for right now.
I don't know. I'm a big Beilein stan, so it's hard for me to like talk negatively about what bringing him back would mean. But the reason he got out of college ball in the first place because he hated the recruiting, what recruiting had become. Now you add a more serious transfer portal that really was just getting started when he was heading to Cleveland, and you had NIL into it too. I don't know if he even wants to deal with that. I mean, yeah, he would be, I guess, a fine stopgap, but that's all it would be. It wouldn't be.
Remember when we used to complain because he wouldn't offer guys until they came on campus?
Yeah. Well, now it's looking.
What a different world, man.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I mean, but the funny thing is that as much as he would hate NIL, the amount of NIL dollars that John Beilein could get from someone would be astronomical. I mean, just how good of a guy he is, and that he's not going to be doing any funny business with this stuff. I mean, how strict and to the rules he is about literally everything. I mean, even during the basketball camps I used to go to with him there, he would make sure no one was recording or anything. He was just strict, very, very strict. No talking to the recruits during the camp and all that stuff. So again, I just don't know how it would work philosophically. I mean, I don't think he's lost his ability to be a good coach. Don't get me wrong, but the game is changed. And yeah, we're not that far away from where he was, but average fan is just reading my mind again.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if Ward does not bring him in like as an advisory role to the search. I mean, I think it's a smart move, and even getting him somewhat involved with the team, like kind of like what he did with the Pistons, is kind of like advisory role there too. I think that's a smart idea because Michigan basketball. I mean, John Beilein is the current day Michigan basketball. I mean, it's who he is. So, I mean, I just don't know if it's a good hire to make right now. He would get support. It would be a mostly popular hire. I just don't know how he would do in this current climate of the transfer portal, NIL, and all that stuff. But I mean, I have no issues with his ability to coach or his ability to understand the game. It's just the stuff behind the scenes has changed so much that it might have, I don't want to let's say phase him out, but I mean, he's been away from the college game for a bit, and that's what happens. When you're away from the college game, or when you're away from the game for a while, it changes. It doesn't stay the same. I mean, yeah, the overall idea of basketball and the schematics and all that stuff might not change, but the stuff that makes you successful, it changes. And I would be really surprised if I didn't find out that Beilein was advising in some sort of role, whether it's to the search onward or just the search. But I don't think he's the answer. I mean, he might be a short-term solution, but you're still going to have a long-term problem after whatever your plans are with him is. So again, nothing against Beilein. I think he's fantastic. He's the GOAT Michigan coach by far, but I just bringing him back, I just don't think is the right move right now. And it is what it is. It's just the game's changed. It's just changed.
Here's where I'm at with John Beilein. I think, like you just said, Josh, he's the best coach in program history, no doubt about it. But first of all, the first problem I have is that in order for John Beilein to come back to Michigan, John Beilein has to want to come back to Michigan.
Right.
And in my personal opinion, I don't talk to John Beilein. I don't know this, but I don't think he wants to come back to Michigan. And even if he does, here are some other problems that I have. First of all, he's 71 years old.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get him for any more than probably 5 years at the most. And going back to your point, Josh, that's just going to set you up with another problem. Not necessarily a problem, but you're going to be in the same situation.
Yep.
No more than 5 years from now. And who knows what the program would look like then. It'll probably be better than it is now, but who knows what it'll be like then. Secondly, like we've all talked about, college basketball has changed so much. And John Beilein, when he was at Michigan, his number one goal was to teach college kids about basketball. He's a teacher of the game. I just don't feel like he would fit in today's college basketball. And I think ever since Ignas Brazdeikis went one and done in 2018-19, that's when John Beilein,
what a good point.
That's when John Beilein, I think, kind of realized like this isn't the college basketball just isn't for me anymore. And that's when he tried to go to the NBA. It didn't work out. And now he's with the Big Ten Network. I just think there are too many roadblocks. I think he would do well, and I think he would win games at Michigan. But I don't think he wants to come back, and I don't think he would fit, if that makes sense. He would win games. I don't think he would win the Big Ten or take Michigan to 2 national championships like he did, but I don't see it. I'd personally hire someone else.
Yeah, I just think he'd be running in place. I mean, I think you nailed it. You'd be right back to where you are whenever that experiment with Beilein is done. So you're essentially just running in place, not making any progress. I mean, yeah, you'd be winning, but how much would you be winning? That's kind of the thing. So, it's just, everyone wants to, like Corey said, everyone wants to live in the past. I mean, yeah, that's fine, but it's just things change, it's just, it changes.
I think too, we were talking about Jim Harbaugh's program and how he found success going up, down his own path. John Beilein was very much that way too. I mean, there was a time where people were frustrated with him as well because of the one and done era, right? And him not necessarily targeting those players. And what he ultimately found success with, don't get me wrong, a National Player of the Year, Trey Burke, helps. But guys stuck around for a few years and developed. And that was the program that he built. And once that was in place, and you just constantly had the next guy up coming, it was working, right? Now is a different era where even if you're not going to play the same ball, so to speak, you need a different type of solution. And I don't know if Beilein is that. And Josh, to your previous point, I think in a more desperate situation, it might have made sense. Hell, if they would have fired him mid-season and Beilein wanted to come in as interim to finish the year.
Yep.
Right. He's obviously got a relationship with Washington, Phil Martelli, like that would have worked. Right. That might have made sense. But yeah, as a permanent solution. And I don't think they need to be desperate, Josh, because, and this is where I'll let you guys feel free if you've got a name you like more than others or whatever, but a lot of the same names are out there, right? We posted our hot board list, which again was more just kind of names I think you could hear, not anything specific in terms of intel, which if you want to get that, head over to michigan.rivals.com. I haven't even mentioned it yet. Starting today, we have an excellent promo going right now where you get 50% off your entire first year. It's scrolling on the bottom right there. Promo code is repeat 2024. If you go to either one of our Twitter profiles, we'll have the link too. But if you just go to Michigan.Rivals, sign up, use that repeat 2024 promo code. Man, now's the time. We're going to have a coaching search with basketball and obviously spring practice kicking off next week. We'll have a bunch of premium content and intel around that. So I know we have a lot of familiar names in our live chat here who are subscribers and join us over there. We appreciate you. If you have any questions about whether you should join, I always tell folks, ask them, ask our community, ask our subscribers. We're really proud of that over there. But
details of the promo are pinned on my Twitter account.
Perfect. That's what I was going to say.
Josh Henschke.
That link takes you right in and adds the All right.
50% off. It's a steal for a year. Come join us.
So look, there is no short list of good candidates. I think, like you said, if Ward hires somebody quick and it doesn't feel like some of this was entertained, that's where there's going to be some frustration, right? And all of these guys have pros and cons and obstacles, right? But I think the biggest name is probably Nate Oates because of his connection to the Michigan area. Alabama's coach, Nico Medved over at Colorado State has been successful. I think probably the other two names I hear the most, Iowa State head coach TJ Otzelberger, and then, of course, Final Four last year, Florida Atlantic, Dusty May. I've seen people bring up Shaka Smart because why not? Right. And then Drake's head coach, who his name escapes me right now, Darian DeVries, right?
Yep, Darian DeVries.
That's a name that I have seen a lot out of nowhere from people that the reason they're mentioning it make me raise an eyebrow. So long story short, there's names, right? And like I said, feel free to tell me if there's any that interests you. But as we move into this coaching search, what do you think is going to make the fan base happy? Make them bad? Can Ward earn something from this fan base that, frankly, I think there's reasons to be frustrated, but man.
Yeah, I think I don't really have like a name in mind where I'm like, oh, this has got to be the guy. I personally would hate Shaka Smart. Yeah, Darren. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah,
he is in the perfect spot in Marquette.
Yes. Leave him with that.
Some coaches, and there's nothing wrong with this. I've said this before. I've never understood why somebody doesn't want to just be the legend badass of the best G5 program or whatever it might be. But like, you find the spot you fit. Like,
yeah.
Shaka Smart went to Texas, and maybe that was too. He's perfect at Marquette. I think he's found a really good spot.
As I said, that blue and yellow team can be his blue and yellow team. You don't need to worry about this Maize Blue team. Leave him over there.
I do like their uniforms, that light blue and the yellow. Nice.
Yeah. I mean, there's names that I would like and be happy with, of course, but there's not one name where I'm like, oh yeah, this is the candidate. This is the candidate. Oh yeah, Phil Jackson, sure. Yeah, we can just run a triangle offense.
I will say I am proud of the Michigan fan base. I have only seen Billy Donovan's name a couple times.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, yeah, because you can say what's Brad, what's his name? Brad from the Celtics.
Stevens.
Thank you.
Yeah, Brad
Stewart.
Yeah, we're still waiting for him to coach Indiana, right?
Yeah, he's going to leave that cushy front office job with the best team in the NBA to come restore Michigan.
I mean, I'm really interested in DeVries. I think he'd be a very interesting addition. Dusty May as well. He knows how to work the transfer portal and bring teams together. A name that no one has really mentioned, and I don't think he'd even be a candidate, but Jerome Tang from Kansas State, I think would be a really, really good hire. He's got that moxie about him. He's got that. It's just an air about him that he can develop players, and he's good. But I just think someone that knows how to work the transfer portal. I'm not super concerned with how he does with NIL because it's different from every program. It's not one standard thing. So if he could get, it's just someone that is charismatic, energetic, young, that can grind on the recruiting trail, can work the transfer portal. I think Michigan is going to be fine because I think working the transfer portal is going to be the moment. I'm getting ready for a tang bang. An orgy and a tang bang. That's what a time to be alive in Ann Arbor.
Tell you what, here's who I really like. Trevor, you brought his name up. TJ Otzelberger from Iowa State. He's young. He's 46 years old. So basically the complete opposite of John Beilein. And here's something I was just looking at it from Otzelberger.
Oh no.
Like
I said.
Don't say it again.
Like I said in our last podcast, I would prefer the bones, the mummified corpse of John Wooden than Juwan Howard coaching this program next year. And look, Ward went with John Wooden. Wheel out that corpse, baby. It's like coffin drop from I Think You Should Leave. That's what happened to get him out of there. This bunch of purple butts hitting pavement.
Can we at least get a hologram? I mean, there's the technology for that, right? Good Lord, Josh. All right, Brock.
You gotta have fun with it.
Back to you.
Apologies to Wooden's family if they're watching. Make fun of desecrate his corpse, but someone had to be a sacrificial lamb. It wasn't going to be me, or I should say a sacrificial body. I don't know.
Stop it.
He's not a lamb.
He's a goat.
He's a deep fake. Those are deep fakes in the comments. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you guys exclusively on Corn Cob TV? Yeah. Darren gets it. He talks ball and he also knows ball. He gets it. Corn Cob TV.
Brock, save me.
Yeah, so let's get back into TJ Otzelberger here. He's a guy who I really like. He's 46 years old, a lot younger than
not dead.
Yes, not dead.
Alive. He's alive.
Yep, he's alive. Not 71 years old like John Beilein either. Here's something really interesting about Otzelberger. The year before he came in to Iowa State in 2021, the Cyclones were 2-22.
0 conference wins.
They were 0-18 in the conference. He comes in and he turns it around. They went 22-13, and they lost in the Sweet 16. The next year, they're 19-14. They lost in the first round of the tournament. This year, they're 25-7. They're the 2 seed in the Big 12. Probably definitely the deepest deepest conference in college basketball. And he's got them as a projected 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. If he can do that at Iowa State, you have to feel like he could be able to replicate that at Michigan. He's a guy I really like. I see his name brought up a lot. Dusty May, too. I've heard he's strongly considered for the Ohio State job, though. So if that doesn't go to Jake Diebler, I think it's going to Dusty May. But I do like Otzelberger, and I don't know what Ward is thinking, but that's a guy who he would probably be my first choice if I was leading the charge.
So back to something I brought up earlier, Josh. Both Ohio State and Louisville have a head start here. And those are programs that are probably going to be competing for similar prospects, you would think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I guess that's a good thing of Ohio State doing what they did. For them, the good thing is that they can get a head start on this. I mean, Louisville is very much in a similar situation to Michigan. I mean, they're just
almost the same record and everything. Crazy.
Yeah, just almost a carbon copy situation where it's just bad. A once really strong program. Now everyone's kind of like, well, it's not that good now. But yeah, but both attractive jobs. I mean, I think Michigan is a very attractive job. I mean, yeah, you say what you will about the roster and the work that I have to do to build it up, but the money is there. The money is there, especially for Louisville too. If you're successful, the money is there. The stability is there if you're successful. Michigan is going to compete nationally with salary wise. You're going to be able to have the resources to be successful. So it's not a bad job by any means. And Louisville's the same thing. I mean, it's not a bad job. So it's just, yeah. I mean, yeah. Would you have liked to have, if you knew that this was going to be the outcome, would you have liked to have seen it be done sooner? Yeah, maybe. But again, with Juwan was how much he means to the program, you kind of have to tread lightly. I mean, really, yeah, you get a couple of weeks head start by doing it, but at the same time, it's just better to cut ties at the end of the year and just get it done that way.
Like I said, who you hire will change the optics and opinion of how you got here.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So
yeah. It doesn't matter how you get there. It's where you finish out. And that's going to be the big question.
I think I made the analogy on the last show with the Lions when they fired Jim Caldwell because they wanted to make that next step. And then Matt Patricia failed and everybody was like, see, this is why you shouldn't have fired Caldwell. firing Caldwell wasn't the mistake, right? Hiring Patricia was. So then you hire Campbell, and I know it's a different front office and whatever, but guess what? Now everybody doesn't really care about Patricia. So that's kind of the spot they're in. Brock, I'm going to let you say something in a second, but somebody mentioned this and it's just kind of blowing my mind. So let me see if I can get this to actually go ahead and talk while I get, yeah. This was just a couple years ago, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I don't know. It's crazy how fast this happens, right? But there you go. 2 former Michigan players and coaches bringing their programs to success. Obviously, Jim got there and is now chasing that Super Bowl, and Juwan Howard didn't. Juwan's probably more.
That was the passing of the torch, the ongoing joke about how neither program is good at the same time. That was when Juwan passed the torch to Jim. That's when things changed.
It's so funny to think about because at that point Juwan's winning the Big Ten and we're all like, yeah, here we go, and he's telling Jim, see, you did it. What are they going to say about you now? And then crazy. I do think, like, in the same way I've said this before, if Brady Hoke came back to Michigan for some type of like anniversary of one of his teams as a head coach, or an anniversary of the team from 97 that he was there, I think he would receive a pretty welcoming applause from a crowd of Michigan fans who, again, thanks mostly to Jim Harbaugh's success, but maybe have a different view now of the job that was asked of him post Rich Rod. Again, like I said with Juwan, and far as taking on too much and being over the head, I think time will heal any type of wounds that may exist. I hope, that there is this, like you said, Josh, with the treading lightly with the Fab Five era. You get Chris Webber back around the program. That was a big deal. And if anybody has an opinion on this, they will gladly share it. Jalen Rose will. So we'll learn in pretty quick, short order how the Fab Five guys in that era feels about this situation. But
yeah. I mean, I'm sure they're not going to be happy, but again, yeah, it doesn't matter. But I think the most important part here is that, and I've seen it mentioned in the comments here, this isn't about Juwan Howard as a person. This is about Juwan Howard as a coach and how he performed in his role. And it just didn't work out. Again, as we said earlier in the podcast, a legendary player, but not a legendary coach. And, that's the way it goes sometimes. So, unfortunate that it had to get this way. It's a tough conversation to have. I'm sure. I mean, yeah, this was Ward's hire, and this was also Ward's guy, and having to have that awkward conversation about firing a program legend, and it's awkward and all that stuff. We'll kind of see how the Fab Five stuff develops over the years. I don't really care personally, but it is what it is. We'll just kind of see what happens. Time heals all wounds eventually, and maybe one day he can be, it can be not an awkward return, or maybe he just returns during the season next year and it's fine with it. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of it's on him, right? Brock, we're coming to an hour here, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. What are kind of your final thoughts and feelings as we sit here and Michigan basketball has fired Juwan Howard, new head coach?
Yeah, the thing I'm most interested in looking to see is what's going to happen with the roster. Obviously, a coach will probably have to come first, but I do figure a lot of these guys may not stick around. I don't want to speculate too much because I don't like doing that, but there's going to be a record amount of roster turnover between this year and next year. I don't even know what to predict in terms of what the roster could look like. It's just going to be completely different. There's going to be an insane amount of turnover, probably unlike anything we've ever seen in Michigan's history. So obviously players now have 30 days to enter the portal if they choose to, and then a new coach is going to have to bring in basketball players of some sort, just keep players to fill the roster, I guess. But I don't know. It's going to be tough, and I'm curious to see what happens with Christian Anderson Jr. and Darrell Brooks, Connie Ruse, guys. Two of them, Brooks and Anderson, who are signed, and Ruse, who is committed but hasn't signed. Interested to see what happens there. But yeah, there's potential for a lot to happen in the next couple weeks and months. That's for sure.
And Brock, it's not going to be just Michigan. I mean, all of college basketball, now that the second transfer rule has been thrown out by a court, anyone who transferred in the last couple of years can transfer again and not have to wait a year. I mean, we already saw, in football, it kind of took another step this year with bigger programs, but that was mostly because of coaching changes. Generally speaking, it's been lower program guys moving up, whatever. I mean, we've seen some big time programs struggle and lose players in the transfer portal. One candidate I've seen come up too is Mick Cronin out at UCLA, who it's been a rough year for UCLA. And he's made some public comments about NIL and not being able to keep people. So like, this is across the board. It's going to be a very, very interesting offseason. I agree with you. So, but as we sit here, I mean, facts are facts. Juwan Howard is out. And Michigan is looking for a new coach. And yeah, the roster is, who knows, man. Like you said, who knows? And it's not really worth speculating. And all of those kids and their families have to make the decisions that they feel is best for them. It just is what it is. So that said, thank you again. Another large viewing here joining us. Emergency podcast, Hail to the Podcast. We appreciate you all so much. Make sure you're liking and subscribing. Notification bell when we go live. Typically we do our show on Sunday, which we will again. Hopefully this Sunday we'll have some more information about the future of Michigan basketball, and we'll have plenty to talk about with Michigan football spring practice kicking off next week. Do you have a Shefty moment, Henschke, as you check?
No.
Okay.
No. Well, I do have a Shefty moment, actually. My Amazon package is 10 stops away.
Oh my God. All right. I love that feature, by the way.
Yeah, it is pretty handy.
Yeah. Anyway, before we go off the rails, as I tend to do at the end of these shows, like I said, we cover Michigan for the Rivals Network, which means you can find us at michigan.rivals.com. If you're not a subscriber already, now is the time to join, not only because of the head coach search for basketball and the intel from Josh there, the premium content with Michigan football, spring practice approaching, Michigan hockey likely about to enter a NCAA tournament run, still trying to win another Big Ten tournament championship. There is a lot going on with Michigan athletics. Join us at Maize Blue Review to cover it all. Otherwise, we will see you Sunday on the next episode of Hail to the Podcast. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.